Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Boots. Today, we're discussing ACL injuries, the step-by-step documentary that Arsenal featured, and we have a special guest on, Tiffany Polson, expert physical therapist, a longtime friend of Trista and I's, and we are excited to dive into all of her knowledge and get to know more about ACL recovery, ACL injury, and prevention. So lace up and let's begin, lacers.
Woo!
Well, first, thank you, Tiffany, for joining us. Do you mind giving us some kind of introduction about yourself?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me to join. My name is Tiffany Polson. I am a physical therapist and grew up playing soccer. So I'm excited to be on the podcast for both of those avenues.
Yeah. We're excited to have you.
Yay!
Excellent. Yeah.
And Tiffany is a long-term friend of ours,
Yeah.
so that's also really exciting. Yeah, and today we're kind of switching gears into we're talking about ACLs and recoveries now that the step-by-step documentary from Arsenal has fully come out, all five episodes. So that will be a big topic of discussion today. But first, what have we all been up to?
We went to Lainey's birthday party yesterday. So,
Ooh,
first
fun.
and foremost, happy birthday, Lainey. Yeah.
Happy birthday, Lainey.
Yeah.
Yes.
What
What did
Woo!
you guys do?
We were over at a wine bar called Roots. They had pretty good food, and then you could insert your card and fill like a glass of wine with a variety of different kinds. And you could set like 1 ounce pours, 3 ounce pours, or 5 ounce pours. I think that was the range, and they all had different prices with
Yep.
them. Yeah. It was
Nice.
good.
Yes. And then today for the for her birthday, we're going to be candle making like later today.
Fun.
Wow.
So wish us luck with that. But it should be fun and it should be exciting. And I've never done that before. So
neither.
Katy, what have you been up to?
I've not been up to anything exciting. It's been, it snowed like mad here the last week. So we had maybe I want to say about 6 inches where I live. So I was pretty snowed in. Just started to thaw today. So I haven't really been doing anything fun at all other than painting. I'm still painting and watching
Still
weird
painting.
movies.
Oh, Satlburn?
Oh, we're going to have to talk about that.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, Satlburn.
Tiff, have you seen Satlburn yet?
No idea what that is.
Okay, that's fine.
That's okay.
Okay. We're going to have to see it. So Saltburn, it's a movie that everybody's been talking about on TikTok or even just, I think like our friend groups and stuff have been talking about it. And I think that's how we all came to watch it, but it's really interesting. And I think it can give everybody kind of a weird feeling about it. So Kylie, Katy, if you were to recommend Saltburn, if you were to say, you should watch this movie because to Tiffany, what would you say?
I have two. You should watch this movie because the acting is amazing. And then, okay, I have to think of another thing because the acting is amazing. That's one thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, two, because
Is there-
the costumes are amazing too. I think the costumes are fun. I would like to be on a set design for them and wear some of the outfits that they wear.
Okay. Is there anyone well known in this movie?
I don't know their names because
Yeah.
I don't know pop culture that well. But the guy from Euphoria.
Euphoria.
Okay.
And
Jacob Eldori.
is that what his name is? Nice.
Yeah. He's Australian and he's very cute. So that's another kind of
That's
plus, I think.
Okay.
The cast is good looking.
Okay, Katy. Oh, yeah. Attractive cast.
Yeah, that's true. And then I guess I would say, I don't know, expect the unexpected. You'll never believe what's going to happen. So That's what I would say.
All right.
It's a little makes you go through a roller coaster of feelings, I think. But keep to the end, because I think my feelings certainly changed throughout it. And I would say it takes about at least 30 to 45 minutes for it to get good.
Yeah, it started off way slower than I was expecting.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think I even liked it until the last 10 minutes. So
Same. That same, even Sarah was like, I don't even know if she even liked it, to be fair.
Yeah.
She just kept saying, what are you making me watch? I'm not sure if I want to go away on this weekend with your friends. So there you go.
What do I watch this on?
Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you've got to give it a watch and then let us know what your thoughts are. I think the most fun thing about watching Saltburn was talking about it afterward.
Yes.
Not the movie itself.
No, but what does everybody have to say about it? That's I think one of the more fun things. Also, now I understand all of the memes and TikToks that were made about the movie, which is another plus because I was like, what is going on with this movie? But I think you should watch the movie because it's not like any movie I've ever seen before. And so I don't think it will be like a movie you've seen before. And also, yeah, I think that the acting was really, really good. So
Okay, I will watch it. Sorry, I have to block off my house because my dog is running her circles.
can you tell the pod
Just
about
talk
that?
about Nala. Yeah.
Yeah. So my dog has this weird trait where she just doesn't stop running circles.
Oh.
She's substituting with her toys now, so let me get that away from her. So she only runs one direction, and the circles get faster with each lap that she goes. Kind of like you think of a horse. And then eventually she wipes out and then picks right back up where she started from. And until you block off her circle, she will not stop. So I figured footsteps in the background wasn't what everyone wanted to hear today.
I don't mind.
Nala is one of the most unique dogs I've ever met, probably. And she's one of my favorite dogs.
Yeah, she is very unique.
What kind of dog is she?
She's a Labradoodle. So just so the audience can see what she looks like. Let me see if I can... Nala!
Oh, Nala!
That's adorable.
Hi, buddy.
She's like, who's that? Is that Trista?
Yeah, so she's a gray Labradoodle and just
cute,
quirky as all get out. She's also a shadow chaser, so it's one of her other specialties.
Yes. The best, though. She's the best. Okay, what is everyone drinking today?
Black coffee.
Same, Tiff. Just black coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just drinking water.
That's really good. That is.
Yeah. Good for me, right?
Katie's the pinnacle of health today.
Yes. I might have had some red wine last night, so you know.
Same. Yeah.
Oh, we did too.
Yeah.
I'm drinking hot chocolate black tea.
Hot chocolate?
Courtesy of Kylie. That's what it was called, yeah.
Gosh.
But it was I don't know, it's pretty good. The gingerbread one definitely tasted like gingerbread, but this one I don't think it tastes like hot chocolate. So,
yeah. That's weird.
I don't know. Interesting.
Thank you to Kelsey for the advent calendar with the teas. Yes.
Aw.
That's how I'm enjoying the tea today. And we'll see if there's other tea. Just kidding. As in gossip.
That was good. Man,
That was good.
Not catching your jokes today. I'm so sorry.
So earlier I was talking with Kylie and I said something that I thought was funny and Kylie and Christine nobody laughed. And I was like, sometimes they just don't hit. And I just on a roll with jokes that don't hit.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Oh, well, yesterday, because I only work half days on Fridays, I took Nala cross country skiing. So
Ooh.
she got to run around in the snow, and I tried to cross country ski. That's like a new sport still for me. I've had them for 4 years, so it shouldn't be a new sport, but I only go a couple times a year because I prefer to go down a mountain and not cross country ski. So I'm trying to be better this year and take Nala out and get her activity. So
Nice.
yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Fun.
Cross country skiing is surprisingly really difficult. Like it's really hard, but I like to cross country ski, although I'm not very good at it because I think it's less scary than staring down a mountain and trying to get down. You're like getting across a mountain, or like if you have to go downhill, it's just like a little bit of boop. Like it's not as scary. But it's really hard, actually.
It is, especially like I thought I'd be good because I've always downhill skied, but it is totally different because your heel's not clipped in. They're way thinner, and I just feel way less in control versus downhill skis, which is not the same for everyone. But
Yeah, that's a tough one, but good on you. That's something that you can do in the snow too, because Tiffany is in Wyoming and she's in a very snowy place. So you've got to find ways to stay active outside. Katie, do you do snow activities?
I make snowmen, maybe.
I like that.
I was going to say, I've only skied once, and it was on a school trip when I was, I want to say, how old would I have been? 10. And I did cross-country skiing, and I was like, why would anybody do this?
I actually was questioning that yesterday while I was out there, but I do it for the dog.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a good reason.
Very good
That
reason.
makes sense.
So, but I've been trying to go downhill skiing like most weekends, like one day on the weekend. We'll see if I make it this weekend. That means I have to go tomorrow.
That's fun.
Where do you go?
I've never skied.
Well, if anyone wants to come, there's a littler mountain that's pretty inexpensive here, so
Cool.
good place to learn.
Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you go cross country skiing at?
There's two spots. Yesterday I went to a place called Chimney Park. It's like a 30-minute drive, and it's like headed towards Colorado. And it's super flat. Like there's not the hills that you have to navigate, so it's really easy compared to other cross-country trails. And there's usually not anybody up there, so Nala can kind of do whatever, and I don't have to worry about her taking out other skiers. Also, I don't know like ski etiquette that well, but like once it gets nice and snowy, they like groom like a true trail for your ski to go in.
Oh, cool.
And I don't want her to ruin that trail because I'm pretty sure people don't appreciate that. So Chimney Rock is less formal and less groomed than the other spot, which is between here and Cheyenne, like Happy Jack area.
Happy Jack.
Fun names.
Awesome.
Happy Jack.
Yeah, Happy Jack.
That's cool.
And also, that isn't that a mountain range or like area called Vitavu, which is a fun
Yeah,
name as
Vivianne
well.
is an area over there. Yep. Kurt Gowdy. It's just all kinds of interesting names.
Those are good names.
Yes.
Where is this in relation to Gillette?
I'm about 3.5 hours south and a little bit west.
Okay.
Gillette.
Okay. I only know where Gillette is because that's where these two are from, so I looked it up.
Do you know like where Fort Collins, Colorado is? Or Denver?
No. I know where Denver is, yeah.
So it's like kind of between Gillette and Denver and a little bit to the side.
Okay.
So, yeah, Katie, also Tiffany is from Gillette as well.
Oh, I am. Yeah. I grew up there. Yep.
Okay.
Wait, So,
All from Gillette.
yeah.
That's
Uh-huh.
cool.
Trista and Tiff, like, how far do you guys go back?
Well, since we were
Oh
5.
gosh. Yeah, since we were like 5 years old. And this is the cutest story of all time. Our mom set us up on a play date from swimming lessons. So like before we even went into school, and we've been long-term friends pretty much ever since. So because we went to the same elementary school, we played soccer together, we lived pretty close together. So yeah, it's been a really long friendship. I would almost, this is going to get kind of sappy, but I would almost consider Tiffany like my sister.
Aw.
Ah.
Definitely, yeah. Gone through a lot of, most of life together, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you first start playing soccer, Tiffany?
Well, that's a good question because I actually don't remember when I started rec soccer. My guess is probably 5, but I started club soccer at 8.
8.
And so then played club soccer from 8 until I graduated college. So,
When you started club soccer, who was your coach?
I think Bill.
Bill.
A guy named Bill.
Is
When
that
did
right?
it?
So you're talking to someone that
Honestly,
has a poor memory, but I remember a guy named Bill being our coach first.
Okay.
He was good.
when did your dad start being our coach?
Oh, not for a while. So we were in high school when my dad started coaching us. So my older brother also played soccer, so my dad always coached him. And then when he switched to running over soccer, my dad got more involved with us girls, and we needed a coach for club soccer. So he kind of took over, and we just had like a tournament team. So once you get into high school in Wyoming, there's not really true club soccer anymore, and not enough girls stick with it. So we kind of pulled from other places and created a team and would go to tournaments together.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned playing in college. What drew you to the college that you went to? And how was your college experience?
Yeah. I just really liked the campus. So it was like a brick pathway campus, trees everywhere, just a really pretty campus. So not even necessarily like the soccer itself, but the girls were nice. The coach was nice when I went on a visit. The campus was actually super deserted when I went on a visit because there was a tornado warning going
Oh
on.
my.
And so most people went home. So a lot of the girls were still there because they were foreign, and obviously can't go anywhere. But like the rest of the campus was pretty empty. So, yeah.
And
I
where did
guess-
you go?
Where did I go? I went to Montevallo, Alabama. Long ways from
Ooh,
where.
cool.
Which explains the tornado warning now.
Yeah, and there had been like a big tornado, I want to say like 2 years before I got there, in like a neighboring town with a college, and so they took tornadoes pretty seriously there. So I was not in harm's way when I was there, but it was definitely a different experience. And then my college experience, soccer wasn't my top priority of going to school. Obviously, it was to become a physical therapist. So I would say soccer provided me the friendships that I have and the fitness level that I needed, but I wouldn't say that it was my favorite experience as far as soccer itself goes. I wouldn't trade it for anything just from the connections I made and the opportunities it provided, but it was less exciting of a soccer career than high school and everything before that.
Do you ever still play? Like, do you go to pickup games at all?
Oh, I go about once a year.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Laramie, there is a league in the summer, and I'll probably end up joining next year because enough people have started asking me to join. But there's like a group of university staff that gets together on Fridays and Sundays and play soccer. So every once in a while, I get a wild hair and show up to that and play. And it is a lot of fun. I actually
Fun.
really enjoy that group. It just is Fridays when I'm still at work, and then Sunday evenings, which Sunday evenings are my like wind down time. So I have to really get motivated to go to those 2 times.
Yeah. What position did you play, or did you play any?
I was in college. I was an outside defender. So
Okay.
before that, I was center defense and kind of went back and forth between those 2 a little bit, but
Okay.
defense.
Cool. Defense.
And Tiffany was like one of the most composed defenders ever. She was so good at like tactically playing. Whenever she would get the ball, she wouldn't like stress out, even though she was the last person like before the goalkeeper. She would like always make the perfect play, the best pass, and I think that was something that you were really good at.
Thank you. That's very nice. I was actually just thinking of this the other day. Trista used to ask me before a soccer game. She's like, "Are you stressed?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. It's just another game." And
Tiffany, that is so funny because I think about that all the time.
It's just not my natural instinct to stress in those situations, but there are plenty of others.
Okay, and we were talking about this earlier too. So this applies to all of us. Do you have any superstitions before you play? Like you need to do this, or this, or you're not going to play well, or anything like that. That's such a big thing in sports, and we should look up what other players' superstitions are.
We should.
But did you have any?
Not like hard and fast. I would have like specific songs, and I would like listen to them in the same order as like my pump up.
Makes sense. Pump up.
But I didn't have like put a certain piece of gear on first, or tie my shoelace a certain way, or those kind of superstitions. Yeah, just music.
But you did have to eat a snack.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I forgot. I've outgrown that. So that is true. I used like a full meal before a soccer game. Like, and that is something I would stress about, is if I did not have access to food before a game. Like mainly like I've definitely outgrown it because this is weird. Most people don't need to eat before they play, but I would get sick to my stomach after a game if I didn't eat.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I one time got like 2 pizza pockets and ate those before a game because we were at like an away game. Before morning workouts, like conditioning workouts, I would eat like a cheese quesadilla. Like this is at 5 a.m. So not normal at all, but I very much needed my food before playing. And
yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And I would eat a granola bar at halftime if I like my stomach was getting upset.
Mm-hmm.
Do you eat before you work out?
So now that's funny that you ask. My pre-workout is a cookie.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So it's a reward for getting out of bed in the morning.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And the way I look at it is I'm getting like simple sugars right before my workout. So I don't do like a protein-filled snack before I work out now, but I always eat before I work out.
Mm.
And your cookies are made by your mom, right?
Oh, my mother makes my cookies, and she makes the best cookies, in case anyone is wondering. So I've even evolved to her making me breakfast cookies. So they have like granola or peanut butter or something in them. So they're not like a chocolate chip cookie anymore. They have like craisins and granola and peanut butter and honey.
Wow.
So,
I love cookies.
Yeah.
If my mom's listening, Mom, I've moved back home now and I'm not that far, so you can make me cookies. Because Tiffany's mom does it.
Yes. And my secret is to put them in the freezer because then they don't go bad. And I just pull one out every time I go to do my workout.
Love that.
They are really good, I will say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Katy, any superstitions?
I was just thinking when you were asking, I don't think I did have anything other than I would always wear like the same t-shirt on match day under my shirt. That was probably it. And it would always have to be the same t-shirt.
Was it a special t-shirt? Did it have anything on it?
No, it was just like a plain like black t-shirt, but it was like it always had to be that t-shirt and I only wore it when we played matches. I didn't wear it training or anything, but it was always the same t-shirt under the kit.
That's definitely that's a superstition thing for sure.
But we didn't always win, But it's really weird because I'm trying to think now, but I can get a little bit like that in life in general.
Really?
With anything else?
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of examples, but I know I'm like it.
Okay, that comes back to you. We're going to circle back because that's just so interesting. Yeah. Kylie, any superstitions?
Not that I can remember. So when I played softball, I liked to bat in the specific 4 slot. I think it was 4. It was either 3 or 4. I never liked batting first or second in the lineup. So that was one thing. I would always bat worse if I was in the first or second slot. But if I was in 3rd or 4th, that was fine. It was like less pressure there. But also, it was great. I don't know. Nothing else crazy though. Yeah. No.
Did you, Trista?
I didn't have any like crazy superstitions, but I really, really didn't like wearing extra clothing like under my jersey or over my jersey on game days. So I never wore like Under Armour pants, and I really didn't like wearing an Under Armour top underneath my jersey because I felt like it made me like not play as well, or that I was like moving slower or something, which is insane because we played in really cold weather.
I was going to say, it must have been cold, right?
It was cold. I had a problem, like even when I ran briefly like in cross country or even during training, I had a really hard time like running with a sweatshirt on or something, which now I would not struggle with at all. I just didn't, I think it was like I don't know, like how it made me feel or something, like a sensation thing more than anything. But I think I was just really cold, probably running around in just like a t-shirt or like a t-shirt jersey in like 30 degrees all the time. And I've definitely, like as Tiffany had mentioned, I've outgrown that too. Like that is not a thing. If I'm going to be outside and it's cold, I'm wearing pants. Like I know. And I guess also now I just don't care if it inhibits my playing ability.
Warmth over anything.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be freezing. But that's one thing I do remember was like, yeah, not wanting to wear the Under Armour, or I never wore pants and I never wore the leg Under Armour. I always just wore shorts, which is crazy because we would sometimes in Wyoming, like I know Tiffany will remember this, we would shovel off our own fields like before we played on it of snow. We would like have to show up early to the game.
Or like the practice before the game was like one time there weren't enough shovels, so we were like stomping on the sidelines because as long as you could see the sidelines, you were fine. So like we were like stomping lines so that you could see those while like some people shoveled. But yeah.
Yeah, which is also so funny because in Wyoming, in the season you play in high school, you play in the spring. And for some reason, we would get the craziest snow, like in April.
Yeah, spring is way worse weather-wise in Wyoming.
Snow-wise.
Yeah.
So they really should just switch that season to be in the fall. But
yeah,
for other sports.
I don't know. Yep. Okay, Tiffany, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into becoming a physical therapist, and also like what one of your favorite things about being in that profession is today?
Yeah. So I injured my back when I was in 6th grade, going into 7th grade. Had to wear a back brace for 3 months and then had to go to PT. And I had a really good physical therapist, really enjoyed PT, so that kind of turned me on to the profession. And then in high school, we do like a mentorship class where you can shadow a profession, and once again, shadowed a PT and really enjoyed it. Also had the opportunity of working at that same place and doing like sport specific training with that same PT. So just kind of a lot of insight into the profession and really enjoyed all of that. So when I was deciding what I wanted to do with my life, I knew I wanted to do something medical, and it's a good opportunity to incorporate fitness into it and make a difference in people's lives and get to spend more time with them. So all of those kind of led to my decision to go into physical therapy. And then um, and actually there was one period where I changed my mind. My older brother's also a physical therapist, so he decided he was going to be a PT, and I didn't want to be the same thing as my older brother. So tried really hard for like 6 months to pick a different medical profession, hated them all. And so that was kind of confirming that I did actually want to be a PT. So kind of just stuck with that path and was fortunate enough to get into PT school and make it to where I am now.
How long have you been a physical therapist?
So graduated in May of 2019. So in about 4.5 years is how long I've been practicing, because I started work in August.
So interesting. One of my favorite things about when I talk to Tiffany is how knowledgeable she is. Like you could just say anything, like I hurt my this or I injured this, and she'll be like, "Oh, tell me more about that." Like when just interacting with anybody, and I'm always like, "She's so smart. She knows so much about all of the things." And Tiffany is also like low key my physical therapist, like from afar. So thanks for all of your help over the years.
Absolutely.
But also, yeah, like that experience is so interesting, especially with a soccer background. And because, we're talking about women's soccer, what is your experience or your understanding of ACL injuries and what that looks like coming from a physical therapist perspective?
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's a high prevalence of ACL injuries. So it's something heavily talked about in school and in the PT world. It's also an area that has a lot of funding for research because it is so highly prevalent. Um, However, I think there's clearly still a lot of work to be done in the research world. There's a lot of like inconclusive studies, or this suggests this, but there's no like hard and fast. So like we know factors that increase your risk of like an ACL injury. In school, we learn more about like environmental factors or like body mechanics, where your body's at in space when you land, strength of muscles, that kind of stuff. But obviously, as we'll delve more into, there's other factors like females versus males, surface that you're playing on, fatigue, that kind of stuff that also plays a role.
So interesting.
That is so interesting. Yeah. And so going off of the step-by-step documentary that we watched from Arsenal and that we're talking about today, Beth Mead and Vivianne Miedema had torn their ACLs within like a month of each other. And that documentary is kind of about their recovery. And what was really interesting to me is like how they tore their ACLs were pretty different. I mean, they were both on the field and they were playing. But Beth Mead ends up just kind of like not really even knowing she heard it. And she was kind of in denial and like even ends up walking off the field and then like finding out later that she heard it. And then Vivianne, her injury was different where she just completely collapsed and she was just like, oh, my knee is out. Like she knew, she heard a popping and like that was it. Like she understood. So, yeah, it's just interesting to me how like they can all, and I've also torn my ACL a couple of times now, and it has looked different each time, and in the recovery is so different. And also, oh my gosh, sorry, I'm really going on a tangent here, but in terms of physical therapy, the recovery, I think from when I tore my ACL 10 years ago, the recovery and then like the how that looks is similar, but also so different. Like when I was watching the documentary and the things that they were doing in terms of recovery, I was like, wow, that's so much different than what I was doing in physical therapy 10 years ago. Or, yeah. So like what in terms of your knowledge, what has changed over a period of time? Like what are those understandings and thought process in the physical therapy world when it comes to ACL injuries and recovery?
Yeah, I think we better understand heal time and not just of the tissue itself, but also in actually like the neuromuscular and biomechanical side of stuff too. So, like even just return to sport time, you've seen really go up to where it's not recommended to go back before 9 months, which that used to not be a standard. The standard, I knew people that went back 4 to 6 months
Wow.
after. And there's more and more research to kind of support that waiting longer decreases your risk of re-injury. And I think that comes from a lot of different avenues of understanding how like strong your quad needs to be, to like landing mechanics, ability to absorb force through that joint. And some of those things take a really long time to get back. And so something that I've seen change a lot is like the testing, like the return to sport testing of like limb symmetry of greater than 90% with like strength and different like functional testing, meaning compared to your other side. You're doing testing on both to make sure that they're equal, or as close to equal as they can be. I think even the gold standard of how stuff is getting tested. So, like something called manual muscle testing, which is literally me pushing against someone's leg. Used to be how a lot of people tested if someone's quad was strong enough. That's very subjective. There's no objective finding in that whole test. So, like handheld dynamometers are something that are more readily available to people today. It's something that we use at our clinic, that is giving you like a true objective measure of the force output that someone is kicking, like with like kicking their knee straight. A lot of differences in that avenue, and then also just understanding how much force is placed on the ACL with different phases of recovery. So understanding that it takes time for your body to accept that the tendon that is now your ligament. It also takes time for something called ligamentization, which means that tendon, your body has to change that tendon into a ligament, basically. And so there's been a lot of research on what the time period of that is.
That is so crazy. And it's also so interesting that so many athletes are going through this and it's still such an issue. And Kylie and I were trying to find statistics earlier on like how common it is for female soccer players compared to other sports and obviously like gender. And we couldn't find a statistic that we like felt was fully vetted, but it does seem like female soccer players tear their ACLs more commonly than any other sport and any other gender, obviously. So, what are factors of that?
Yeah. As kind of talks about, one is just like our genetic makeup. So, both like structurally, like knee alignment, strength, training. Like a lot of times, like females don't necessarily have the same training early on in life. An interesting thing that I actually just listened to not too long ago was PT hypothesizing that like roughhousing as kids, like you're like the different stresses being placed on your body just with like roughhousing, versus females not having that same thing could be as much as to play a role on what your knee is like capable of withstanding. There's been like obviously more research into like menstrual cycle and hormones and like ligament laxity because of that. And I think there will continue to be more sound research coming out on that, because a lot of it is suggestive but not definitive. That plays a big role. But like a known thing with like non-contact injuries is that when you land, you have a certain amount of knee bend, so like 10 to 30 degrees of knee bend. And then there's usually some kind of rotation, which is common in soccer, right? Because we're pivoting and changing directions. And something that either causes our body to go one way or our knee to go inward, to create that excess stress on that ligament.
Hey, just do you mind walking through your ACL tears?
Sure. So it's been over 10 years now since I first tore my ACL, and the knowledge and like understanding of and recovery, all of that has completely changed. When I first tore my ACL and went into surgery, I think I was able to come back within like 7 months. I'm pretty sure, which now would not be recommended, as Tiffany had mentioned. And also, I did end up re-injuring my ACL due to that. But also, I had taken a hamstring graft for it to be turned into my ligament, but later I found out that my surgeon hadn't placed it quite as diagonally as it should have been in order to support my knee correctly. And it was placed more horizontally, which caused me a lot of issues later. About 4 years later, I retore the same ACL. And due to that, I had to get like a bone graft put into the hole to fill that hole so it could get replaced, more like this, at a diagonal. So it went more across my knee. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But yeah, it's crazy. I think the hardest part is just kind of mentally, like not being in the same place you were. And also as a teenager, it's really hard to comprehend like a big injury, because similar to Tiffany being in middle school, like injuring her back and whatnot, it's just like, oh, my whole life I've been able to do this and this and this and this, and then it's just like, oh, it's now kind of taken for granted. And that's another thing that the two players had mentioned a lot in the documentary. They're just like, I think I value soccer like in playing more now, because I wasn't able to, or it was like taken away from me. And it was also kind of hard for me to then have an identity like as a player, because soccer had just been a part, and playing had been a big part of my identity. So then when I wasn't able to play like on our senior year team and things like that, I had just really struggled in like trying to find my place, and identity. So that's like a big part of injuries that people maybe don't talk about, is just the mental aspect, which I think was a little bit harder than even like it physically hurting. But yeah, a big part of recovery was just like staying really committed to physical therapy and things like that. But now, I've sort of tweaked it here and there, but I've just know that how important it is, and talking to Tiffany too, on still staying like up to date with even small things like warming up before I play in a pickup game, or if I'm not feeling as strong that day or whatever, it may be just as best not to play, like now that it's just not worth it and things like that. Or if my knee is just like, it feels funny from lifting the day before, maybe today is not the day to go do like pickleball or something like that, like I would normally do. And just kind of listening to my body now, I think, is more important than ever. But yeah, definitely learned a lot from my knees. And then also there's a lot of differences in that have changed since I injured my knee. Like even not too long ago, I saw a girl who had a knee brace, and Tiffany and I have talked a bit about knee braces too, which I would love to talk about again. But they are so different from when I injured my knee. Like the one that I was playing with was this big, like clunky knee brace, and it was like hard to run in. And I remember working really hard to get out of the knee brace because I wasn't as fast and I wasn't as like quick as like I needed to be in collegiate soccer. And so I ended up getting out of the knee brace. But now, like, they're made to a point where it looks like they're a lot easier and lighter and thinner. And yeah, so I think there's also still because also are knee braces a thing, Tiffany? Do
So
people?
people
Yeah, let's talk
can
about it.
wear them, yes. There's no research to support that you need one. So usually, like what I tell people is if you mentally feel like you need a brace and that makes you more confident in your knee, then go for it. But there's no research to say that it is going to help your knee in any way. Your ACL should be strong. And so your risk of injury is obviously just the same as if you had never torn it. It should be the goal by the time you return to the field. And if you need a brace, then that means the rehab was not good enough. They sent you back too early. They didn't get your strength up enough. Something that caused a breakdown. So yeah, there's actually nothing to support a knee brace. But I have had like one or two people use it, but that was once again for the mental side of it, which is also very important. So and we now have like an outcome that tests mental readiness for a return to sport. And if people feel like they're ready to return to sport, and that's like a very validated objective outcome measure that we give to people. So that would be like a case of yes, using one.
Interesting.
Quick side note, back to your injury, it's also way more likely that you're going to injure your opposite knee than your same knee, especially that far out of surgery. So therefore, that knee brace isn't helping anything because it's your other knee that's at a higher risk.
That's interesting.
Is that because that standard that you were saying of them being within 90% of the sameness wasn't there then? Is that why, or just in general?
Why you're at a greater risk? Yeah, one recent thing that was discussed in a podcast I was listening to was the deceleration. So that's a hard thing, like that weight acceptance and deceleration of your ACL reconstructed leg. And so if you don't decelerate properly on your rehabbed leg, then your step before your plant is what's decelerating. So then your plant leg becomes your deceleration when it's already in a bent position. And so then when you plant to cut or do something, it's also taking all that deceleration, which then is a theory as to why that other knee is going to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think there's obviously other reasons too, but that was just a recent reason that that's kind of the last phase of rehab. So something that often gets missed in the PT world because we don't have insurance coverage to go necessarily 9 months out with a patient, or it's hard to get maybe a patient to come to PT for 9 months. So I think part of that falls on PTs being able to space out visits and save a visit or two for that last phase. But that's kind of a difference versus like when you're playing at a really high level, like in the step-by-step documentary where they have people watching them every day or like programming for them. And they also have the discipline to do what they're told every day. So I think a lot of it, just comes from that late stage being missed.
Trista, what are the differences in what you saw in the rehab of the step-by-step documentary compared to yours?
It just seemed like there was a larger focus on time than there was, and that's something that Tiffany had also mentioned. It seemed like they cared a lot more about making sure that everything was healed before putting them back in. And you wouldn't necessarily think that about professional athletes because you would almost think you try to rush them to get back into playing the sport, especially with 2 stars for Arsenal being out and injured at the same time. But it seemed like there was a lot of care put into making sure that they were like completely ready. And even at times, like in the documentary where they felt like they were ready or they were like eager to go back, it was just like they still had to like put in more time into their recovery. And that's, I think, what's so heartbreaking about an ACL injury, similar to like what just happened to Sam Kerr recently too, is you just automatically know that it's going to require a lot of time until you're able to play again. So I think that's one thing that's, I don't know, like so sad. It's not necessarily the injury itself, because I don't even think that it hurts or that they're in the recovery is difficult, but you just know that it's going to take a lot of time until you're able to come back. And even, Vivianne at one point, like in the documentary, mentioned that it was kind of hard that she had torn her ACL 1 month after Beth, because then she was like constantly kind of behind her, like they weren't at the same pace, and like mentally that was so difficult. And so I think that's another thing that's changed, is we're not trying to rush athletes like back into playing their sport, with this, especially with this type of injury, because this, it could kind of be career ending if you tear it again, or if you're not ready because you don't do the proper care or take up the time that is required in order to like fully heal. And that was something that was interesting to me. Kylie, Katy, what were your thoughts on the documentary? What were some of your favorite things from watching it?
I think I liked just how open they were. Like you got to see them in their home together. Like it wasn't always like happiness. There seemed to be a lot of struggles. And I also liked how they took in, I can't remember the other player's name, but she did it not long after them. And
Was
they
it
were like,
Laura?
come live, yeah, come live with us, right? And you can't be on your own. And I think maybe that talks to like the mental state of having to go through it, right? So I kind of like that they kind of worked together as a team, and not just because they were together, but they also included, their other teammate.
Trying to think about what I liked also. Yeah, it's taking a second. I liked it. I just liked, obviously, always getting to know the players and stuff like that. But um, I liked them talking through all of the different maybe things going on in their life at the time that their injuries happened, and kind of discussing like not even the physical load that was on them, but the mental toll that was kind of going, what they were both going through, and how that could also be linked to their ACL injuries. I liked that they were so open and sharing that with everybody. That was nice. Yeah.
I also thought it was interesting that Miedema, she had asked, I remember she went and took a break, right? Was it 3 weeks she got off?
She did. Yeah. Yeah.
And then she came back, and it wasn't long, like 2 weeks. So she'd had a rest, but she had been playing for like 2.5 years straight. And so she decided, like, I need to rest. And she spoke how, like, before because she was 16, she was this great talent. All the pressure was on her in her first World Cup, right? To win she was like the hope of the Netherlands winning the World Cup, and how she took a lot of pressure on. And then I like that she shared that kind of story. And then she stood up for herself to say, because it was mid-season in Arsenal, I need a break. I'm not going to play. And Arsenal supported her. But I also thought, like, even though she had that break, it obviously wasn't long enough, because she wasn't back. I think it was 2 weeks she was back, and she didn't even have the ball, right? She just turned and did her ACL. So it's not like I think people sometimes think like it's a knee injury like that. You've got the ball and someone's tackled you or something, right? It's not even needing to be tackled with the ball.
That was also a difference with Beth Meads too, because Beth did have the ball, right? I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
when she got injured, and so it just, like, how it even looks just doesn't even look as severe sometimes as maybe like somebody breaking their ankle or something like that. And sometimes it does look severe, where you're like, oh yeah, they've injured their knee for sure. But sometimes it can just be like the simplest thing and change of direction, or whatever it is that injury happens. Um, yeah. So, and that's also, it's just, yeah, it's sad. Well, today we watched Arsenal play, and we got to watch both of them on the field and like crushing it. So that was exciting, kind of like a full circle moment now that they're healed and back and playing and things like that. But it's also heartbreaking to hear about Sam Kerr, who's going to be missing out on the Olympics, and the rest of Chelsea's season playing with Emma Hayes. So yeah, it's just sad.
Yeah. It was also sad. So like Arsenal obviously had those three ACLs and Leah Williamson out all at the same time. And it's like those it's almost like what am I trying to say here? Weird how like they are all stars on that team and play for their country, and how it still like isn't, I don't know if it's something to figure out, or like how we can get more funding into it, or how we can like figure out what is going on, because it does seem like an epidemic, I guess, for women's soccer. And like I don't know if that would be the same in a men's sport. Like if you have your three best men's players out, like wouldn't that call for something, I guess? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, yeah, that's interesting. And you could say that, I think, for a number of things between the difference between male sports and female sports, but definitely it makes you wonder like the research that goes into it, or the, I guess, the understanding of it. And that's kind of, I think, what the documentary highlighted. And what was also interesting about the documentary is it didn't really have a solution, which seemed weird, is we just had a lot of people like talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there wasn't really like, oh, this is where we're headed, or we now have like a solution or something that, you know, that we can do to like support these players or support their training or whatever it is to prevent these injuries. It was just talking a lot about it. And so it makes you kind of wonder, well, what's going to happen? Like what needs to happen in order to ensure that they stay healthy, that we're not, you know, everybody's destroying their knee. So it also makes you wonder kind of what Katy said. Do we need to build in more rest? Do we need to build in more like ACL pre-training type stuff into the workouts, which I'm sure they have, but like what is it that is required so that we can also make sure to take care of these players? And with a player that hasn't had a break, and a lot of these players haven't, especially like in Europe, a lot of these players haven't had a break at all. And so ensuring that they do, and like Tiffany, as a physical therapist, maybe you can tell us how important recovery time is.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak quite to what theirs looks like just because I haven't paid as close of attention. But from like the documentary talking about how it went straight from like tournament to season to tournaments to season, um, there's no, like when we think of like say college soccer, for example, you have like your high demand season, and then you have your kind of recovery, and then you have your season where you're focused on like building strength and like some of the like off the field things that you can't do in season because the demand is already too high on your body. And then you have like your like games that you play in the off season that don't really mean anything, in the sense of like you're not playing to get into the win a tournament or um anything like that. So there's just like a different pressure on you for those off-season games. So I think when you're always expected to be at your top level, and there isn't an off period to focus on things like the strength or agility, or like maybe the more off the field type of stuff, that can create problems.
Yeah, and I think they said in the documentary that, and I thought this was actually kind of a crazy number, 29 players couldn't play in the World Cup because they had damaged their ACL. Yeah. And I was like, that is a huge number, that especially when a World Cup only comes around like every 4 years, right? So it's kind of like, what more needs to happen to help these women? And I think they also spoke, which I liked about in the documentary, is I guess women's soccer is at the highest that it's ever been. So these players have gone from like something like 20 games a season to 50. So they've doubled their games. And then the other piece around it is they never got into real, like when, you know, big football clubs sign these women, they're at least 17, 18 before they're properly getting strength and conditioning plans, which I think that must be a huge, whereas boys, right, big football clubs here, Manchester United, Chelsea, they'll go and scout boys at the age of 9. And if they see great players, they'll take them in at 9 and they'll get strength and conditioning plans from that age. And I think that's huge.
And I would agree. I think a lot of it comes to like the demands that your body has placed under and the amount of time that your body has had to adapt to those things. And so when, you're talking, you've had 1 season or 2 seasons to figure stuff out versus somebody that's been prepped since 8 on having strength on their joints, being able to withstand different demands being placed on them. It's a big difference.
Yeah, because I remember like being young and thinking, oh, on holidays, right? And you're in with your family, and I would like always like to play sports. So sometimes I'd be like, oh, there's a gym here. I'm going to go to the gym. And my mom was like, don't lift the weights, you know? Like it was always this thing about women and kids, like, you know, or girls not lifting like too heavy. Don't lift too heavy weights, right? Because you don't know what you're doing. And I remember always and thinking, oh, I shouldn't do that, right? So I just used to do a lot of cardio most of the time from the age when I was probably like 12 to like 16. I don't think I properly lifted weights until after 16. Because in the UK as well, I'm sure there was something like 16-year-olds have to be like, or anyone younger has to be accompanied by an adult or something, right?
Yeah, so a lot of foreigners is who I played college soccer with, and none of them had formal weight training when they came to school. And unfortunately, and granted, I'm at a really small school, not Division 1, and so the focus isn't as much there maybe as bigger schools, but there was one strength and conditioning coach for every sport, and they were never in the gym with us. So form was never even something that was taught properly. And so even from that perspective, like even through college, even though we had weights, they weren't done effectively.
Trista, you were saying you had to teach your lifting partner how to do stuff too, right?
Yeah, I mean, in college soccer as well, I would say it's roughly the same. I think where we grew up in our situation was just a little bit different. So I had like weight training, and I think a lot of us had.
You guys were both my lifting partners,
like on my team.
Yeah. So we were fortunate, but that was not the standard. Yeah.
No, and we had I think 7 international players when I played my freshman year of college, and I think some of them were sophomores, so they had lifted like the previous year. But even talking to some of my other players, or my lifting partner in particular, from being from a different country, did not like know how to lift, or didn't even really quite understand the importance of it,
the value,
and sometimes would just be like, why are we like, I've never done this, I don't know why we're doing this, like I don't understand, like just the whole concept of it, and so I definitely think that also was 10 years ago, keeping in mind, like roughly. So I do wonder how that's changed. And we did have Fran, one of my college player teammates, on last week, who had talked about how much the game has changed and how she's like a little bit envious of players coming into women's soccer today, because there's so much that has changed within the sport and it's growing so much. And so I think that support has maybe changed, and hopefully there is some sort of a shift. But we're still seeing the same amount of injuries, and maybe even more, just because of like the demand that's being placed on the physicality of the sport. So, and it's also so interesting to me because when I had torn my ACL, I didn't know a lot of people that had at that point. torn their ACLs. Like there weren't a lot. I think there was a couple players that had torn theirs after me, or maybe one or two before. But it was kind of hard to relate to players, and it's almost like a sign of weakness. It's like, oh, I'm like weak. Like part of my body is weak if I have this big injury that I don't really know a lot of people have. And now that we're seeing it more and more in women who are at the peak of their sport, at like at the highest fitness level that they're probably could be at, it's like that's definitely not the case. So what is it that can benefit and like will limit these injuries from being so intense and severe?
Tiff, are there prevention tactics you can do, like ACL prevention tactics, ACL tear prevention?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there is a lot of them implemented in warm-ups and stuff now. But the prevention is for like non-contact injuries is what we're talking about. Like where you're landing at in space, the strength of your muscles, teaching better mechanics for a lot of stuff, but then also making sure you're warmed up and have like the like proprioception into your joints.
Can you
going
say that
into
word
a
again?
game.
Proprioception. Sick. Okay.
So like the input of where your joint is at in space, more or less. So like when we think of balance training, that's kind of, or like jumping and landing and in the mechanics of how you're landing, that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to improve on. And so there is a lot more work going into that stuff, but I would say there has been for a while. It's also been like a known fact that females are way more likely to tear their ACLs. I think it's just a hard thing to research and figure out how to prevent, because obviously research takes a ton of time. And we've come a long ways in the last 10 years, but there's clearly just a lot more to be learned, both from the female versus male, and then all of those different factors, both intrinsic and extrinsic.
Well, and I think you could say, like, in terms of research, right? Maybe the sport has just grown faster than research can keep up with it in order to be beneficial. Like, especially like professional women's sports. And even since we played, in high school in more competitive soccer, things have changed so much. And now we're seeing so many signings of 15, 16-year-old, well, I don't know about, 15, I think, 16-year-olds getting signed directly into playing professional soccer in the NWSL even, which is, we just hadn't seen this level before. And so that's also requiring so much of your body, which is probably going to have more injuries. And so that's also changed so much over time and probably quicker than like research can keep up with. And so you almost have to adapt to the adapt to what soccer is and what female sports have risen to now, and then try to help it. It's crazy. Any other thoughts on the documentary?
I think for me, obviously they talked a lot about like the mental aspect going in to the game, like where they were at, and not specific to ACLs, but I've known of research being done on like stress and sleep and diet before injuries, in other capacities, and obviously those can play a huge role. So I think how they were both saying they had events or stress leading up to their injuries, that definitely impacts our bodies.
No, that's interesting because I think it was Beth Mead, right? Her mum was going through a really, really bad time through her cancer treatment, and she had come away from the England camp midweek, spent some time with her mum, and then her mum obviously said, "You need to go and play." Because that's when her mom knows she's happiest. And her mom was like, because that's when where I love to see you on the pitch. And so I also think as well, I remember when I played soccer, you loved it so much that when you're going through a hard time, sometimes you just want to do the things you love, right? To get that endorphins and that good feeling. But I think they were also saying like they need to give the players more coaching on how and when they know like what's going on in their lives for them to say, I'm not ready to play, right? Whereas you're pushing yourself to go and do something that you want to do, but maybe Beth wasn't really in the right frame of mind and her body wasn't in the frame of mind to get into that game. And then she tore her ACL, right? So I thought that was actually really interesting because I had no idea that any of that played a part in injury. And Tiffany, you probably know way more that it does, right? But I would never think of things like that. I would just think of injury as just like tiredness in your muscles and like your movement, right? That's what I would think. But that was
Yeah,
quite
so
eye-opening.
even with that tiredness, like something called your rate of perceived exertion, people rated their tiredness higher when they had less sleep or more stress in their life. So even though they did the same workout, they felt more tired. And so I think that does still play a factor, but it's both the psychological fatigue and like the actual physical.
There was a point where one of the, I think, researchers in the documentary was talking about how you never do the same thing twice. Like, can you talk a bit more about what that looks like? It's like you'd never like jump and land the same way twice or something like that. And I thought that was interesting for me. And I like to lift and have the same
Yeah, I
form.
think that's what makes this such a hard area to research too,
Yeah.
right? No two injuries are the same. No two people are the same. So the goal is to be able to have your body, like no matter what way you jump and land, your body can accept and withstand the load that you're placing on it. And so you're not during like your training, you shouldn't be doing a perfect jump every time. You shouldn't only be working your body in like one plane of motion because you're trying to be able to withstand anything and everything. Because you're right. During a game, I mean, there's so many other factors too, right? You're in the air and someone pushes you. It's different. So I think that becomes really difficult to then research because there is no exact way that people are tearing their ACL. Everyone's injury is different. Everyone's surgery is different. Road to recovery is different. So a surgeon just the other day, because I am treating someone that had total knee on both knees, 8 weeks apart, and the patient was asking a question on it, and the surgeon was like, "You're comparing apples and oranges. It's the same person, but even your two knee surgeries are not the same. Your recovery is not going to look the same." And so it's really hard to do research because humans are so variable.
That is, yeah, that's crazy. And that's kind of what, surprised me about the documentary too, was you're looking at two professional athletes who who tore their ACL a month apart, but they did have like pretty different experiences and difference in recovery, difference in mentality. And you're seeing that too. And also how their injury happened was like completely different. Um, so I thought that was another interesting like thing that was in the documentary, because for some reason when I watched it, even as somebody who has torn their ACL, I expected it to kind of look similar, and you want it to almost seem similar so you can relate. You're like, oh yeah, we all have the same experience, but it's not that way. It's completely different. And I think also coming back from an injury like that, um, it can be kind of difficult. So like especially mentally, especially being away from your sport for upwards of 9 months. So it's been cool to see Beth Mead and Vivianne Miedema come back and like almost at the same standard that they think they were before, which I think can be really hard. Tiffany, what do you think? Like, what's that recovery look like in terms of coming back to the same like level of athleticism and like standard that you need to be to be a professional athlete coming back from an injury like that?
Yeah, I don't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but there's actually a really high percentage that never return to their prior level. So, right, like you have that injury and your expectation is you're going to get back to that level, but there's a lot of people that don't even return to sport after an injury, whether it be psychological reasons or their body, stuff like that. Um, but I think a lot of it is listening to your body and your recovery too. So they say you can be back in 9 months, but there is no true timeline, right? So how you're doing during practice, how you're doing during your trainings, what your strength is, how your body just responds in general should be the determining factor of when you return to sport. And I think that also determines your success with return to sport. So saying, okay, you're at 9 months, you get to go back to sport, versus saying, okay, you're at 9 months, but you're still limited in A, B, and C. So you're not going back to sport until you are successful at those things. And so a return to sport might look like 12 months. It might look like a year and a half. And I think that is a big part in your success too. But I do think, I mean, it is absolutely possible to come back at the same level or better than the level you were at before, as long as yours and your team's commitment, meaning like both medical and everyone else, is to get you back to that level.
Tiff, it's been so fun listening to you, and hearing all of the knowledge that you have.
I know, this was really cool. Yeah.
I am so glad that you came on the pod to share your knowledge with everybody who's going to listen, as well as just with us, because as I had said at the beginning of the podcast, every time I hear you speak about physical therapy related things, my mind is just blown. And I'm like, it's just like with anything with my friends, I'm like, oh my God, like we talk all the time and we, like chat, but to hear your friend, somebody you're really close with, be so knowledgeable and so passionate about something that you have no idea about, or also that you didn't even know, like the knowledge they possess, is just so cool. You're like, wow, you're brilliant. Like, you know so many things. And when you learn that about somebody you're really close to, or like a really good friend, it's just, or even like when I would listen to Kylee and Katy talk about engineering related things, I'm just like, oh, what in the world are they talking about? But also that's amazing that they know these things. So yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us and with Boots today.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on. I hope I didn't ramble too much on
You were perfect.
PT stuff, but
perfect.
Yeah, it's been really enjoyable to talk about this, and it's really exciting that you guys are doing a podcast on this and women's soccer. So hopefully it continues to grow and turn into even more.
Yeah, so next we're going to get Beth Mead and Vivianne Miedema on to talk about their ACL.
I could reach out to Ali Riley, right? She liked my comment.
Liked your comment.
So I'm like,
yeah, Ali in LA. Yeah.
Nice.
There we see.
I know,
we're making waves.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're going to open it.
A fun moment. Okay.
Okay, you ready, Katy?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
This is so cool.
You need to check which one's which, though.
Yeah.
You'll know when you open it. You need to open up the shirt.
Yeah.
And you'll figure it out.
This is really exciting.
Yeah.
Of course we were going to be excited.
This is so cool.
Why are you putting pressure on your...
I was just adding to the suspense. Did you get it read the right way?
This is
so
remember?
Cool.
Oh my gosh, with our favorite numbers.
Remember I
asked? That we talked about last time.
Remember?
Yeah. This is amazing.
I have one too. I have one too.
Oh, can we wear them on the next
So we can wear them when we do our pod. Yeah.
Oh.
And we look like a team.
Yes. And we're part of the Gunners. Oh,
this is exciting. Thank you so much.
We can't have Fran on when we have these now.
We can't.
I know you can't have Fran on.
Oh my gosh. This is so cool. Katy, this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Katy, now when I go
You're
play
welcome.
soccer with all the people, everybody always wears their jersey.
They're going to know your name.
They're going to know your name.
I know, and they're going to know your
Know
name.
my name.
Trista, it's like, how could you forget? When they call you like, hey, over here, you'd be like, my name's on my back.
Call me by my name.
Call me by my name.
They call me Stacy.
Perfect.
I'm sorry.
I can't wait. Okay, should I go back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
Okay. She's going to go back to there.
All right, I'm going to sign off, but thanks for having me, guys.
Tiff, it was so fun.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tiffany.
so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode on boots. A huge thank you to our guest, Tiffany Polson, for sharing her invaluable insight on ACL injuries. It's been an enlightening conversation, and we hope it has been for you too. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more interesting discussions. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so feel free to reach out to us with any questions or stories you'd like to share about your own ACL experiences or comments related to our podcast episode today. Thanks again for listening to Boots.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.